We often like to think of ourselves as good people. We believe we care about others, that we want justice, fairness, kindness to prevail. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself a hard question? Who exactly counts as others? Who really matters to you and why? And even more challenging, who doesn't matter to you, whether consciously or unconsciously, because of where you've drawn your invisible moral boundaries? This idea, the moral circle, has shaped human civilization for centuries, yet most of us rarely think about it. Today I want to challenge the way you see the world, the way you assign value to life, and ultimately the way you define what's right and wrong. Because here's the truth, your moral circle isn't fixed. It's a choice, and expanding it may just be one of the most important things you ever do. From the very beginning of human history, our moral concern was narrow. Our ancestors cared about themselves, their families, their tribe. Strangers were dangerous. Animals were resources. The environment was just a backdrop to survival. The circle was small, tight, and exclusive. And yet, as societies evolved, the circle grew. People began recognizing that members of other tribes, other nations, other races, other genders also deserved moral consideration. Slavery, once normalized, became condemned. Women's rights emerged, civil rights expanded, the circle widened, but never enough, never completely. Even today, our moral circles remain uneven. We care deeply about some humans, our friends, our community, those who look or think like us, but far less about others. Refugees halfway across the world suffering unimaginable pain? We might feel sympathy, but often not enough to take action. Animals experiencing agony in factory farms. We look away because it's inconvenient to face. Future generations inheriting a burning planet. We think about it, but tomorrow feels too far to care deeply today. This is what Jeff Sebo calls the problem of partial moral circles. We have a habit of drawing boundaries around empathy and protection, and these boundaries are usually arbitrary. They depend on proximity, similarity, and convenience, not logic or fairness. And because of that, countless beings are left outside the circle, voiceless, unprotected, forgotten. Think about it this way. If morality is supposed to be about doing what's right, if it's about reducing suffering and increasing well-being, then why should geography or species or time determine who matters? Why should a person next to you matter infinitely more than a person across the globe? Why should a cow matter less than a dog matter less than a human? Why should someone alive today matter more than a child who will be born in 100 years? The truth is, there's no objective reason. These divisions are psychological comfort zones, not ethical necessities. Our brains evolved to care about our group, and that instinct still drives us today, even when it clashes with our own values of fairness and compassion. And here's the uncomfortable part. When we fail to expand our moral circle, we enable harm. Every injustice in history, from slavery to sexism to genocide, has thrived because people decided that certain groups of beings didn't matter as much, or at all. And today, billions of animals endure suffering. Billions of humans live in poverty. Future generations face existential threats, largely because they fall outside our immediate circle of care. So what does it mean to expand the moral circle? It's not just about being nicer or more charitable. It's about fundamentally rethinking who counts and acting on that realization. It means recognizing that any sentient being, anyone capable of experiencing joy or suffering, deserves moral consideration, regardless of whether they look like you, live near you, or even exist at the same time as you. Jeff Sebo argues that expanding this circle isn't just morally admirable, it's necessary for survival. Humanity faces massive challenges: climate change, factory farming, AI, pandemics, global poverty. These aren't isolated issues, they're consequences of our narrow circle. We act in ways that harm distant humans, non-human animals, and future beings because they're invisible to us. We take more than we give, we prioritize convenience over compassion, and we pretend the consequences don't exist. But imagine a different mindset. Imagine if every decision you made, what you ate, what you bought, how you voted, how you treated others, was guided by a wider circle. Imagine you saw a chicken suffering as clearly as you see a child's tears. Imagine you cared about a person living in extreme poverty across the planet as much as your neighbor. Imagine you thought about a grandchild you'll never meet every time you made choices that affect the climate. Wouldn't that change everything? Wouldn't that lead to a more just, sustainable, and compassionate world? Now, I know what some people are thinking, but I can't care about everyone. It's overwhelming. And that's true. We're finite beings with limited time, energy, and resources. But expanding your moral circle doesn't mean you can fix everything. It means you stop pretending some suffering doesn't matter at all. It means you factor others into your decisions, even if imperfectly. It means you stop making excuses for indifference. We already do this selectively. Most of us would save a drowning child if we saw one in front of us. But what about a child dying of malaria far away? The difference isn't moral, it's emotional. We feel urgency when suffering is visible, and distance makes it abstract. Expanding your circle is about training yourself to bridge that gap, to see invisible suffering as real, to let your empathy stretch further than your comfort zone. And when it comes to non-human animals, the challenge is even greater. Our culture has drawn the circle tightly around humans, leaving billions of sentient beings outside. Yet science shows animals feel pain, fear, joy, attachment, not identical to us, but real nonetheless. If morality is about reducing suffering, then why exclude them? Is it just because they're different? History shows that difference has never been a good reason for exclusion. Not in race, not in gender, not in species. Finally, we have the matter of future beings. Those who don't exist yet, but whose lives will be shaped by our actions today. We pollute, burn, destroy, knowing someone will pay the price later. But because they're not here to scream, we feel justified ignoring them. Expanding the moral circle means imagining their voices, recognizing their right to a livable world, and making sacrifices now for their future. So where does this leave us? The moral circle is not a fixed truth of the universe. It's a boundary we draw, a habit of thought we've inherited, but it can grow. In fact, human progress is largely the story of that growth. More people, more beings, more voices included in our sense of justice. Yet there's still so far to go. Every day you draw the circle with your choices. What you buy, what you eat, who you advocate for, what you tolerate. The question is, do you want to keep living with a small exclusive circle that leaves countless beings out in the cold? Or do you want to push the boundary further, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges tradition, even when it costs you something? Because in the end, morality isn't about abstract philosophy. It's about impact. It's about asking who is suffering because of what I'm doing or ignoring, and do they matter enough for me to change? That's the challenge Jeff Sebo puts before us. To see the moral circle not as a static, safe little bubble, but as something elastic, something we can stretch wider and wider until it includes all who can feel, all who can hope, all who can hurt. Because until we do, we're not living up to the idea of being good people. We're just good to a few, while leaving the rest behind. And maybe the real measure of morality, the real test of our humanity, is how far we're willing to let that circle grow.